Shabbat Shalom to those who are in the back. I want to invite everybody forward. If you're one of our families who are here for Shabbat and are back for our kindergarten, first and second grade dinner, and you want to stay for services, you are welcome to come on forward. And I just want to welcome everybody here tonight. My name is Rabbi Mark Katz. This is our clergy associate, Ronnie Pressman. I'll do a more formal welcome in a few moments. If you happen to be staying in the back, you can, by the way, always kind of enter through the side this way. That way we can make sure that everyone has a prayer book and they can follow along. Even our pre-readers, it's a good idea to have prayer books. That way they can feel a part of services as well. I want to welcome everybody officially tonight. If you, a few kind of logistical announcements before we officially get started, as we are finding some others walking in. The first is that if you need large print prayer books, they're on your right. Hearing assisted devices are in the office to the left. If you need bathrooms, they're outside to the right, though all gender and handicap accessible bathrooms are through the office and to the left. Tonight, if at all you feel like you're lost, you can always turn to somebody near you. Don't be shy in asking where we are on the page or in the prayer book. We'll make sure that you find the right page and that we can always make sure that we are literally and figuratively following along together. We'll probably close that door also. That way the sound that way our students can make as much sound as they want outside. And should for some reason tonight you need any emergency exits, you can always find an exit here or in the back, as well as the exit that you came in. So tonight, sing along, clap along. Sometimes a simple yababa or a bim bim bam is enough to set the stage, and you don't need to necessarily know all the words or every melody. And so we'll begin tonight. We're on page 24 as we join together with Shalom Aleichem.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Sharet. Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Sharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Sharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedkem Shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malchei Shalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
In a moment, we're going to light our Shabbat candles. And it's my pleasure this week, we actually have two of our students becoming B'nai Mitzvah, Susie and Leo. And so in a moment, their parents and them and siblings are going to come up, and together they're going to light our Shabbat candles. Now, I noticed as I was walking in today, Lev turned to me around 5:30 when we were walking in for dinner. And he looked at the sky and he said to me, how come when we're walking here right now, the sky has a little bit of blue still? And I actually realized that for the first time ever, and there's a moment right around probably the end of January, early February, in this case, I guess we're in the middle of the month, where you kind of notice that actually the days are in fact slightly getting longer. And that when we walk in at 5:30, it's not pitch black dark anymore. It's just getting dark. And so what that means is that we begin to understand the flow of time. We mark that flow each week as we light the Shabbat candles. Sometimes you don't realize that time is moving by, but if you punctuate it with moments that are repetitive, that happen week after week after week, then you begin to see the changing of the sun, the changing of the seasons, the changing of your life. And so as we light our candles tonight, I want you to kind of mark where you are at. And then hopefully next week or the next time you are around candles, I want to invite you to see how you are just a little bit different the next time you see those dancing lights. So we'll call our B'nai Mitzvah families up. We're on page 2 and 3.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who hold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
We're on page number 5.
There. 1, 2, 3.
When do we start? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom tehillah lamikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta v'otanu kiddashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha b'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat.
Amen. Amen. L'chaim, take a sip.
We're going to join together on page 20 as we move into L'chadodi. And greetings, by the way, from Cantor Greenberg. She was supposed to be leading tonight, but she has a bit of a stomach bug. Hopefully it's a 24-hour thing and we'll see her tomorrow morning. But she sends her regards. But it all means that we just have to add our voices even more into this room. We're on page 20, L'chadodi.
L'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nekabelai, yairai, yairai. L'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nekabelai. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad. Hishmiyanu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad, ushmo echad, l'shemo tiferet velit chila, l'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nikabelai, yairai, yairai, l'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat. Nikabelai, likrat Shabbat, lechuven elcha, ki hi mekor habracha, merosh mikedem, Nesucha, Sof Ma'aseh, B'machshavat Chila, L'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nikabelai, yairai, yairai, L'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat.
Verse 5,
Hitoreri, Kiva Oreku mi Uri, Uri, Shir Daberi, Kivod Adonai, Alayik Nigla. L'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nikabelai, yairai, yairai, l'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nikabelai.
We rise together, verse 9.
Boi v'shalom, ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha uvetzola, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, L'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nikabelai, yairai, yairai, l'chadodi likrat kala, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nikabelai.
We remain standing. We're on page 28 as we join together for the Baruch Hu.
Yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai, yai dai 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 Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
We're seated together, and I want to turn our attention to the screen for a special creative rendition of this prayer, page number 30, Mariv Aravim, roll into dark, roll into light. And for our students who are here, I hear this is a standard at Tefillah on Wednesdays, which you are all too young for, come to think of it. But you'll know this soon, I promise. Roll into dark, roll into light.
Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night. Borei ol v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech, golel or mipnei choshech, v'choshech mipnei or.
Roll into dark.
Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night. Roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day and day turns to night.
Top of page 33. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et
Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shiftecha b'veitecha uv'lektecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tiskeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'hitem kedoshim lalohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem emet.
Top of page 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Page 40.
Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nega b'kodesh, nora tehilot o sefele, nora tehilot o sefele. Malechutecha ra'u banecha, okei ayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, ze'elianu.
Let's hear you.
Adonai imlo leolam
vaed. Adonai
imlo leolam vaed. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. Yai dai 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 yai dai 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 dai. V'ne'emar kifad Adonai et Yaakov u'ge'elo mi'achazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
Bottom of page 43. Give us a place to rest, Adonai our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. Baruch atah Adonai haparesu kat shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim. Bottom of page 44.
Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat Mekadeshei, Mekadeshei Shvi Shabbat Kulam yisbehu v'yitagu mitu v'chashava Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat V'hashvi Ratzita bo v'kidasho Shabbat Chemdan Yamin O Tokarata Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat Zecher L'maaseh v'reishit Shabbat Zecher L'maaseh v'reishit Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat Yismechu v'malachutecha Shomrei, Shomrei, Shomrei Shabbat v'korei Oneg Shabbat.
In a moment, we're going to rise together, and after this opening meditation on page 46, we'll move into silence through the end of page 62. Our Amidah prayer is a prayer that you can either pray the words on the page or the words in your heart. And I know, by the way, in this room, I'm so happy that we've got so many students. I want you to know it's okay to have a little bit of cacophony. Even though that many of us will be praying silently, the buzz of the sound of little voices is actually one of the most beautiful sounds that we can hear in here, which means that as we turn to silence, it's okay to have a little bit of noise at the same time. So we rise together, page 46.
Adonai sifatav tiftach ufi agitehilatecha.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufia gitehilatecha.
So we started out with a prayer out loud, and then we went silent for you to do your own prayer, whether they were the words in the Siddur or they were the words in your heart. But we never close out our prayer without the opportunity to pray for peace. Page 62. Oh, say shalom bimromav, uya say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
We turn together to page 253. And our thoughts go out to those who are in need of healing, who are in need of a refuah shlema, complete healing of body, mind, soul, and spirit. Before we pray names that are in our hearts and that are up on the screen, my eyes are going to go around the room, and I'll invite anyone here who has names of people for whom they're thinking to share them, and then together we will pray for their well-being. We join together.
Misheberach Avotenu Mekor Habracha Limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imotenu Mekor habracha le'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat shalom. So I challenged myself to try to find a sermon that would speak to adults but wouldn't be boring for our K through 2, though it seems like we've had a lot of attrition. We don't have many of them left right now. But I'm going to see if I can do it. So a little while ago, about a year or so ago, somebody was shopping synagogues. They came into my office and they began to talk to me about what they thought about the kind of gestalt of the synagogue that they were looking for. And they said to me, look, I like most of what Ner Tamid is about, but one of the things that I can't really wrap my head around is how much you guys tend to talk about justice. Why do you care so much about social justice? And so I began to tell him the story, and I actually really talked about this week's Torah portion. I said, look, you have to understand, we come from a legacy where Jews were slaves in Egypt. And from that legacy, we ended up finally leaving and getting free. And that taught us the empathy to take care of the stranger, of the widow, the orphan, and he cut me off. And he said to me, what is with you rabbis and answering straightforward questions with stories? And I said to him, that's actually kind of the Jewish way to teach wisdom. And in fact, that's incredibly true. If I stood every year and I told our students or I told my kids, hey guys, I want you to be good people. It's a good idea to care about the other. You probably should care about the stranger. You should give charity. You should look out for those less fortunate. That probably wouldn't mean anything compared to reliving what it means each year to be slaves in Egypt and to go out and be free. The power of story, the power of narrative tends to be able to touch something deeply within. And I want to just give you a few examples. So for example, if I said to you, it's a good idea to seek out God because God is seeking you as well. What does that even mean? But if I said to you, once upon a time, there was a little boy, it's one of the more famous Hasidic stories, who was playing hide and seek with his friends, and he hid a little too well, so that his friends looked and finally gave up. And as the sun was going down, the little boy left his house and ended up finding his grandfather on the way home. And the minute that his eyes met his grandfather, he burst into tears and he started crying. And he said, "Grandpa, Grandpa, I hid and no one came to find me." And his grandfather, with tears in his eyes, looked at him and he said, "That is the way God feels all the time." Which is more powerful, the story or the philosophy? Here's another one. See if you can figure out what the main theme of this is. Though, by the way, in Judaism, we tend to spoon feed it to you. The story is called the mashal, and then there's always the lesson at the end, almost like Aesop's fables, the nimshal. But once, a man was hosting a party and heard a knock on the door. This is my favorite story to tell kids. And standing there was a beggar. Now, the beggar asked to come in, and the man said to him, "Absolutely not. Look at you. My party is beautiful. People are well dressed. What are you doing standing here in rags? Like, you won't belong. Go knock on someone else's door. You can't come in." Now, little did that person know that it was actually the prophet Elijah who was standing at his door. Now, Elijah, who tends to be mystical and powerful, kind of waved his arms, and Elijah turned into kind of this guy who looked like a prince, who was wearing white robes and a beautiful hat and amazing shoes. And he knocks on the door again. And the man, thinking that someone really important had graced his presence, invites him in and sits him at the head of the table. And he says to him, eat, whatever you want is yours." And over the course of time, the man began to do some strange things at dinner. First, he took the soup and he poured it on his stomach. Then he took the mashed potatoes and he rubbed it on his shoulders. He eventually took the carrots and he put it at the top of his hat. He poured the wine on his knees and finally put his feet in the pie. Now, finally, the man couldn't understand what was going on, so he yelled and he said, "Stop, what are you doing?" And the man said, I probably don't, by the way, have to give you the nimshal. You probably can figure it out. "You turned me away because of my clothing, because what I looked like on the outside. You didn't even notice I'm the same person. So when I came in robes and you fed me, I realized you weren't feeding me, you were feeding my clothes. And therefore, it's my clothes that deserve to eat." Story is powerful. It is profound. It gets at things that none of us could. Narrative is the bedrock of what it means to shape hearts and to shape minds, which is the reason that books are all the more important. Now, you'll be hearing about this in a little bit, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn because the effort hasn't officially launched yet. But there is an effort underway, at least in Glenridge, to ban 6 books from the Glenridge Library, all LGBTQ themed. Now, what that means is that there are a group of people in Glenridge who don't want those particular stories because of what they stand for. And our community is not going to stand for that. The Glenridge greater community is not either. You'll be hearing later about efforts that Glenridge residents are taking. And by the way, if you're new to this community and you don't know what I'm talking about, Glenridge is about 100 yards that way, even though we're in Bloomfield right now. But what that means is that it becomes all the more important to make sure that people have access to story. Because imagine being a young kid and reading a book that opens your eyes. Raise your hand if you have gotten a new perspective when you were growing up from a book that helped you understand the other in a way that you never did before. Raise your hand if growing up you saw a book that seemed to so get you, its story got inside you, that you actually felt seen in a way that almost no other person could because the book just got you. Raise your hand if that has ever happened to you. Story can do that. And Judaism is filled with story. We are the people of the book because narrative matters, because it moves us, because it penetrates us, because it gets into our hearts. It makes us grow. I can't tell you a message that is more powerful than a story might, which is why Jews love to tell stories. In fact, one of my favorite collections of pieces ever from the Forward, which is the Jewish newspaper that a kind of note, it's the New York Times for Jews, is called Have I Got a Story for You? Because what does it mean to pull somebody around and to say to them, I've got something that is going to move your hearts and your minds. Once we were slaves in Egypt, and now we are free, and now we are more loving and compassionate because of it. So with that in mind, I want to encourage you to tell stories. And I want to encourage you to encourage others in your life to keep telling stories. And as you do, you will find that within these is nuance and a world of meaning. Shabbat shalom. We're going to rise together as we turn to page 282 for Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu kamishbechot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, Vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad.
Please be seated. One more story for you. There was once a rabbi who used to go out into the forest, and he used to light a candle, and he used to sing a song. And in that special place in the forest, right where the covering was perfect as the sun was going down, he would connect deeply and spiritually with God. But then he passed away, and the next generation came about. And the person knew where to go in the forest, and they knew to light a candle, but they'd forgotten the song. But they did that each and every Shabbat until they passed away. And then the next generation arose, and they knew to light a candle, but they didn't really know where to go in the forest, and they didn't know the song either, so they would stay at home, and they would light that candle, and they would remember. Until finally a generation arose who didn't really even know how to light the candle, who didn't know where to go in the forest, and who didn't know the song. But they knew the story, and they told the story over and over again, so that the next generation learned the story, and the next generation learned the story after that. And even though the ritual was a little bit different, the telling of that story kept it alive. In a moment, we're going to read a list of names, and in doing so, we're going to recall, hopefully, some of their story. Now, some of these names may not mean very much to us anymore. There were names of important people in others' lives who may not even be part of this community, but who asked for these names to be here in perpetuity. The simple act of reciting the name is almost like the person who didn't know where to go in the forest and didn't know how to light the candle and didn't know the melody. But yet just that little tiny connection, that little tiny piece means the world. And so we recall the following names, and I'll ask you to rise if I call the name of your loved one. This Shabbat we recall Barry Abrams, Joan Ascioni, Herman Barron, Robert Batkin, Frank Becker, Bess Berg, Edith Berman, Joseph Bianco, Irving Billow, Max Chasin, Hyman Chavkin, David Condesor, Kate Krasnopel, Shirley Din's friend, Tema Dorman Ackerman, Francis Ehrlich, Arthur Feiertag, Albert Fleischman, Hannah Elise Forum, Edwin Frank, Seraphima Furman, Daniel Geller, Helen Goldberg, Charles Gruber, John Dittbrenner Jr., Herbert Holtzman, Morton Hyman, Jesse Kaplan, Harry Kaplan, Ben Katz, Jane Landberg, Raymond Lang, Beatrice Levine, Irving Levine, Marguerite Lilienthal, Nancy Melman, Susan Deborah Morgenstern, William Passner, Minnie Portnoff, Julian Reichman, Lois Rothenberg, Solomon Royal, Lorraine Sadler, Edith Shapiro, Marcella Schifrin, Ben Schoenfeld, Louis Schwartz, Jacob Schwartz, Alan Smith, Tessie Steyer, Ruth Stone, and Jerry Sorrell. I have a feeling, by the way, I read this list last week, which means that there was a mistake in our administration. And so I'm going to ask, actually, if you're here for a yard site specifically tonight, for you to rise and say the name of the person that you're thinking about. And for those online, if you're also reserving a yard site, feel free to put their name into the chat or to stand where you are. Our community also recalls the following recent losses: Larry Gould, cousin of Alexandra McGuire, Walter Epstein, father of Allison Kusilik, and Judith Kosak, mother of Deborah Gussoff. We also, our hearts go out to the Glen Ridge community as they are mourning a recent death. There was a tragic death, and the funeral is actually going to be on Monday. And the student's name is Nathan Latifi. Thank you, Nathan Latifi. And so we recall his name, and if you're remembering him, I'll invite you to rise. In addition, I'm going to invite anyone to rise who is in their 1-year period of mourning and to share their name. Max Renteria. We rise together, page 294.
Gadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yomad divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayei chon uv'yomei chon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv yimru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei amaya, yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudashah baruchu. Le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran b'yoma v'yimru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, huya aseh shalom, aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru, amen.
May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort us. Together we say,
Amen.
Please be seated. And sincere apologies again if you came to hear your loved one's name on this list and we did not read it tonight. We'll make sure to fix that for next week. So there was one name that I didn't read tonight, but is a yard site this week. It's the anniversary of Debbie Friedman's death, who wrote many of the most important of our melodies that we even sing on Shabbat. And so we're going to end with one of her melodies, a beautiful melody, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy." It's pretty easy, and I invite you to turn to the screen. You'll see the words, repetitive, and you'll get it. As together, we mark her yard site as we close out our service, and I'll invite you outside to join together in Kiddush, we already did Kiddush and Motzi, to join together in a cookie or some fruit and to meet someone new. Shabbat Shalom.
Before we close, do you want to do any announcements?
Yes, actually, I probably should. I'm going to do some announcements. So we've got a number of things going on over the next number of weeks. Next weekend is our Shabbaton, which is, Ronnie, do you want to explain about it?
So it's a day of prayer and community and learning and tons of awesome food. You can still register. Unfortunately, the price is not the early bird special, but you can still register. So by all means, do so. That's happening next week. It's a whole day of awesomeness.
Yeah, so tomorrow morning, we have our text study online, 8:30, and then we have a double B'nai Mitzvah. And so congratulations to both of you and to your families, and we can't wait to call you up to Torah for the very first time. Then we've got a number of programs happening over the course of the next number of weeks. A friend of mine wrote a book that is, I think, worthwhile to know about and to read. It's called Awakenings, and it's about basically a hopeful, optimistic look at the Jewish people. So everybody always says, you know what, in this day and age with assimilation, Judaism is disappearing. This is a book that questions that. Rabbi Josh Stanton co-wrote the book, and he's going to be joining us on the 30th, where basically he's asking the question, is that actually true? And looking at all these initiatives and all these nonprofits and talking about the creativity that's in the Jewish world that's just engaging so many people in this day and age. And then 2 Thursdays from now, we're going to be welcoming Josh Gottheimer, Representative Josh Gottheimer, here to the congregation. He is not most of our representatives. He's actually the representative mostly for Bergen County. But the reason I invited him, because there's kind of always a high holiday sermon that every rabbi gives each year that's kind of their central sermon that feels like the most important message. For me, it was the idea of learning from the other and people who disagree with you. And so Josh Gottheimer has what's called, he was a founder of what is called the Problem Solver Caucus, which is about 30 Republicans and 30 Democrats who get together, and when something needs a bipartisan support, they agree and then they vote together en masse. And so it's like one of the few things that actually work in our government. And I'm proud of it. And I want him to come talk about what does it mean to disagree in a very constructive way, to hash it out, and then to come together with a compromise. Because I feel like that's a skill that many of us in this day and age need to keep reflecting on, because it's missing, not in this room, but outside in the world. And so there's lots of other things going on. Please read your emails, look at our website. We would be happy to have you join at any and all.
Want to say anything about the Torah scribing?
I wasn't going to, but I can. We are commissioning a Torah. The next Torah scribing date is actually full, which is why I didn't, which is Sunday, the 26th of February, but we actually added a new date. And so March 1st, we have a whole set of other slots that you can slot into to be able to write and leave your mark in our Torah that we are scribing for Ronnie's 13th anniversary. And then later on that month, we're going to be celebrating her with a gala. So with that, we finish. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy.
The words will come up on the screen for you. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Join us. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Is the song of a dreamer, from the dark place it grows, like a flower in the desert, the oasis in our soul. Come back where we belong. You will hear our longing sighs. Our mouths, our lips are filled with song. You can see our tears fill joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap
Shabbat Shalom. Make sure